and comment. So we're doing some something very funky and weird with this build, and that is we are going to be using a cyborg class mod with points into Primal Surge. Now, I'll have an additional skill tree if you don't have a class mod with points into Primal Surge that you can use for this build. However, Primal Surge is awesome, and we use it on our Ordnance build to give us infinite Ordnance, and Primal Surge reads that whenever we apply a status effect to an enemy, there's a chance to partially restore Amon's shield and ammo. Now, this works for Ordnance, but it also works for guns. And with a gun build, if we're shooting a bunch and we have high status effect chance and we're proccing a lot of status effects, we can get infinite ammo on our guns, even on guns that have very low mags like the bod, so we can shoot infinitely. Now, shooting infinitely is great, one, because when you're not reloading, you have higher DPS, but particularly with weapons that apply stickies, the more stickies you have on an enemy, the more damage they deal when they explode, and that explosion damage is going to be way higher if we can put more stickies on, and that's what Primal Surge is allowing us to do. The other interaction here is we're going to be using fire weapons and shock weapons and fire grenades and shock. Grenades and throwing them out to proc electrical fire. This reads that whenever Amon burns an enemy, he also shocks them, and whenever we shock an enemy, we burn them. Well, what? while we're proccing electrical fire, which we can proc from things that aren't our gun, which we'll talk about in a second. But whenever we're proccing electrical fire, we're proccing additional status effects, which gives us tons of uptime and guaranteed uptime of Primal Surge, because whenever we proc a fire dot, we get a guaranteed shock dot and vice versa. And then this is going to allow us to sustain ammo on basically all of our weapons. And then everything else that we're using is just to increase the damage of our weapons and make us hit really, really hard. So now that we've done a little overview, let's get into the skill tree. Now, there's a lot of ways to spec this build. And then there's a lot of things that I tried. This is the favorite spec that I came up with. But like originally, for example, we were using like Get the Lead Out with bolt action, which allows us to get bonus shock damage. But then I was like, the whole point of the build is to not reload. So bolt action is just not like up all the time. It seems a little pointless. And we tried speccing all the way down into Primal Surge and putting a bunch of points into this. However, with our current setup, we were never proccing Icy Rage, so this was just like wasted points. However, you can still spec into this and use like a cryo weapon. For example, like the Aegon's Dream works with Icy Rage. However, this is the spec that we ended up with. So in Blue Tree, we're going Wrath of Nature. This gives us more status effect application chance. Proccing status effects are really important because if we are constantly proccing status effects, we can get constant procs of Primal Surge. We're also going Battleborn. This is a ton of gun damage. Whenever our health is full, we're getting 40% gun damage, which is super, super awesome. And then we're putting points into Bullet Hail. Now, I was actually pretty unimpressed with this skill on an Ordnance build. However, it seems to be doing something very funky with stickies, and that the sticky detonation, like when you proc this, and if it's proccing off of stickies scale with the amount of damage that is on them. So when you're detonating them, the detonations from the stickies will scale, and they'll deal way higher damage than a normal gun would deal because they're scaling off of sticky damage. And then that is dealing ricochets at 75% of damage dealt. And so I was seeing Bullet Hail ricochets for like upwards of 400,000 damage, and they're just flying out at enemies. And so if you're using stickies with this, this skill seems really, really powerful. However, most of the time I was unimpressed with this, but on this particular build, it's actually pretty sick. And then we're using our class mod with points into Primal Surge, so that whenever we are proccing status effects, we can restore shield, which we're going to be using an amp Watts for dinner. And so we've got amping all of our shots, and we're beginning our ammo back. Then in the red tree, I put 5 points into extra incendiary damage, 3 points into impetus for some extra movement speed and shield regen. I didn't put really any points into Wield the Storm. We're just kind of moving down here. We're not really scaling dot damage, so just kind of moving down the line here. And then Bullet Storm is massive. Whenever we apply a status effect, we get generic gun damage. Generic gun damage is going to be really important on this build because we are going to be using the bod as one of our main weapons because the bod just benefits 5x from any of our gun damage increases. And then we're also rocking Catastrophe for the extra crit chance and crit damage. This will always be up on this build. We've got Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath, not super important on this build. You definitely could use like a spread launcher with Dragon's Breath and like throw a crit knife. I just wanted to show something different, but Dragon's Breath is pretty neat. And then Electrical Fire is really what we're here for. Whenever we're proccing burns or shocks, they'll proc the subsequent status effect. And then we're also rocking Berserk with There Is Only Red. We have pretty great uptime on Berserk, particularly for mobbing with this build because we kill so quickly. And then we're just getting a bunch of extra bonus cryo damage. Now, I did originally plan to use a Fish Slap with My Touch is Death. So you could use a Fish Slap to proc this, and then you could also use a Fish Slap to proc Fist of Stone and give you cooldown on your Forge skills. And that's really cool, but I've done a bunch of like Fish Slap builds on Amon already, so I wanted to try something new, and we're doing some really cool grenade tech that the Fish Slap wouldn't work with these skills, so that's why we're not rocking like Fist of Stone or My Touch is Death. Could definitely spec those though. For our action skill, we're going to be using Onslaughter. Most of the time, I'm using Pyroclast simply because this allows us to upkeep our Forge Storm. Our Forge Storm is going to give us extra shield regen, but also bonus incendiary damage. The only thing is you need to kill enemies really close to get the extended duration with Pyroclast. So that's why I like rocking shotguns on this build. You just get up close to enemies, kill them, and you'll get your duration restored. You can also throw out storm cutters to restore your duration even more. For bossing, you can put on Force of Nature for detonations, but most things won't live for you to have time to detonate them. However, this would like massively increase our damage. For bossing, if something doesn't die to your stickies, you could just go hit them with like a storm cutter, for example, and then they'd be very, very dead. Now let's talk about gear, and we're definitely using some very specific and very strong synergies to make this build really shine. So if you don't have great gear, there's a lot of other Amon builds that I'd reference you to. We do need some pretty like specific synergies to make this like really, really pop. And the first thing is the weapons we're using. There's a lot of awesome weapons you can use. Weapons aren't as important on this build as some of our gear that we're using. The Hellwalker's fantastic on this setup. I farmed this stray today with the big Encore. It's a Fire Jacob stray. Fire Jacob stray allows the stray to ricochet. It's got a really high dot chance, which is fantastic for us. And with our setup, with a like just by base, if we're burning enemies, we're getting 30% crit chance. Then you can use Jacob's enhancement for 20% crit chance, and all of a sudden your stray has a 50% chance to crit, which is massive. It's really, really good on this particular mobbing setup. For bossing and mobbing, we're using elemental bods. Elemental bods are not easy to get, which is why I said this is a very specific setup. You would want a fire or shock bod. It's not mandatory. You could use the grenade that we're using to proc your fire and shock things, but we are trying to synergize with fire and shock. So for this build, I was rocking a fire bod or a shock bod with stickies and SMG ammo. These things do ridiculous amounts of damage. I was killing bosses using like a shock bod on armor bars because we can do so much damage. And once again, shoot infinitely. So like even if you have to shoot a little bit more, the boss will still die in your detonation. Also had a like Torg sticky shock anarchy, also really strong on this build. Anything that's fire or shock will synergize very well with this setup. For our rep kit, for bossing, I was using a shiny war paint with chrome for the extra fire rate and enrage for the extra damage dealt. For like general mobbing, I'd probably rock a kill spring. Kill spring's really nice on this build because we don't. Have a ton of healing. We also deal more damage if our health is full. So for like general mobbing, I'd use a kill spring. Bossing, definitely a war paint. For our grenade, this is something that is specific to this build. Doesn't need to be a waterfall. It can be a lot of other grenades. However, there is a roll on grenades called the Alchemic Augment, which gives your grenade 300 50% increased status effect chance. And this waterfall, for example, because it has this, is going to be able to basically instantly proc status effect. Effects on enemies and keep those status effects going. So if I'm using a bod which has relatively low status effect chance, we're going to be buffing up our status effect chance a ton. But if let's say we don't get a status effect chance proc from our bod, if we throw a grenade before we start shooting that bod, we will have basically infinite shots with that bod, because especially with this waterfall, it's going to have lingering payload and allow us to keep those shots up. Just to show you an example, let's see if we can do this. So I'm going to shoot this SMG bod without like throwing the grenade, and we'll see how long we can shoot for. Curious to how this is going to look. So pretty decent, actually. That's kind of insane. Any boss is dead to that. Now let's do one with the grenade. Also, you can see our shots are hitting like that was over like a 1.9 million tick. I didn't even have my action skill or berserk active. Now we can throw these grenades down, which will proc status effects, and if we damage the other guys, so you can see all of those ricochets. Our grenade is gone now, but also these ricochets are going to be hitting real hard. But that is kind of the setup with this build. We throw the grenades, hold the trigger down on the bod, and just go. And like, I mean, that was like a 1.7 million dot tick. Pretty crazy. But yeah, that's kind of the core idea. For our class one, we're using the Cyborg, 4 points into Primal Surge. That's really the main thing you're looking for on this. It's what's allowing us to shoot infinitely with this setup. For the shield, I was using Watts for Dinner with Siphon and Amp. We do benefit from both of these roles on this build. We're getting tons of shield regen from Primal Surge, and Siphon gives us the free overshield, so we can amp all of our shots and deal even.
Way of getting here is by having this silo open, the deep 7, that way you can just make your way over here, and the boss that we are farming today is a bio bulkhead. So like I said, you gotta do
but it needs faster point. is literally right at the bottom of the big tower before you get into the other dominion. But the nearest fast travel point is this one right here. So what we'll do, guys, is we'll come back to this actual fast travel point. You see it's actually under here where I'm at, underneath this balcony. But we'll go back to that fast travel point and make our way to this actual spot. So again, fast travel point we're going to go to is this one on the right hand side.
Bro, get to the damn point, man.
Yeah, people. But yes, a massive update in regards to Borderlands 4 today. I've read through the patch notes.
Bro, get to the point, bro.
Again, we'll discuss
All this damn talking.
So yeah, there we go. So let's check out what we have, people.
All that damn talking, man. Talk too fucking much. Nobody want to hear all that shit. Nobody wants to hear all that shit at all. Now, you still there?
Hello guys, it's me, the evil frog fishman. Welcome back. Follow me. We're going to leave this place at once. We're gonna go over to this side. He did this because get over the cliff. Here, please let me know what your favorite milkshake is in the comment section down below. And here is the vendor this week. I will show you what this looks like on the map. Very nice. And reminder, you can't see this vendor unless you've done the introductory endgame mission, and your drops are going to differ from mine.
Get to the fucking point now. All that damn talking. I hate people that just talk the whole time. Shut up. Now, you still there?
In other reality, I wouldn't have to kill you. Here we are.
You still there, Naya?
I tried to be the best, Never. You'll be best.
Now, I will be honest, I only did this because I thought it was funny to just go yippee when I go into the sky. Yeah, and then you just for this week. By this week's reminder, you can't see milkshakers in the comment section down below, and here is the vendor this week. I will show you what this looks like on the map.
What the fuck?
Very nice. And reminder, you can't see this vendor unless you've done the introductory endgame mission.
Like, zoom out, dumbass. Like, why the fuck do y'all make videos and y'all don't even show what the shit is?
Shakers in the comment. You can't see this vendor. Oops, I'm gonna
No shit, Sherlock.
the vendor again. Nice.
That makes no sense why we can't see it. I hate that he doesn't show where the hell he's at. He's not showing where the hell he's at. It's actually pretty annoying. Their path is pretty bad in the game. I need to fix that shit. Pretty fucking bad.
A sickening crunch. Lovely.
Out there, man.
For a brief moment, I can forget the deaths of everyone I've loved. It's you and me, champ.
Hello? Is somebody out there? Somebody not psychotic. Could you do me a favor and let me out of here?
Hell's bells, there's still rippers about. Please, get rid of them so we can talk.
Why the fuck is he going all the way over there? That's weird. Sit there now. Naya.
Yes! Make me feel something!
seats, man.